Hey guys, and welcome to a brand new video here on FPL Now. Today we're going to be going over my final thoughts and just an overall game week preview for game week 11, going over the most asked questions, what to do with Reece James, Mitrovic, Luis Diaz. Going to be talking about all of that today. So if you're excited for the video, drop a like down below, leave a comment, what are you doing with your game week 11 team, subscribe if you're brand new, and let's get into the video. So, starting things off, there are going to be three big questions that I'm going to be going over today. What to do with Reece James, what to do with Luis Diaz, what to do with Mitrovic. Also going to be going over game week 12, captaincy options, and everything like that. But we're in a bit of a weird situation right now because there's quite a few injuries cropping up, such as Trent and James, and obviously Luis Diaz and Mitrovic and stuff like that. And we don't have a lot of time to kind of maneuver these situations because we have game weeks coming out as thick and fast. We have a game week 11 happening this weekend. We've got game week 12 midweek, and then we've got game week 13 like next weekend. So that's 3 game weeks in the span of like 9 days, which is not a lot of time to like sort stuff out and everything, and also is not a lot of time for players to get back from injury. Now, of course, Reece James did pick up an injury midweek in the Champions League game. I mean, I watched the game. It didn't look like the worst injury, but of course, it still needed like a scan and everything like that. And we didn't really have any major updates until today. And it turns out that Reece James is most likely going to miss game week 11. So he's most likely going to miss the Villa game. And as well as that, because game week 12 is midweek, he's probably going to miss that too. He might be back for the United game, which is obviously game week 13. But of course, the thing about Reece James is like, obviously he's such a good player and he's such a good option. But if he was to miss Villa and Brentford, that's probably the 2 best fixtures up until game week 17. Because after Brentford, next weekend he's got United, and then Brighton away is a tough fixture. Then he's got Arsenal at home, and then Newcastle away as well. Like these are relatively tough fixtures. And then we get unlimited transfers in game week 16 anyway. So if you did want to bring him back after the World Cup, you'd have game week 17, he'd have Bournemouth at home and then Forest away. So if you were going to bring him in, obviously you'd bring him back for this game week. But is it really worth keeping him if he's going to miss these 2 fixtures? Now, obviously we'll wait for press conferences tomorrow and stuff like that. But it's very likely he's missing Villa. It's likely he's missing Brentford. And he potentially could also miss United as well. Like, I'm not saying that he's definitely back for game week 13. He might not even be back for that game week. So he's going to miss 3 game weeks potentially. And then you have him back for Brighton, Arsenal, Newcastle. They aren't the most, you know, appetizing fixtures at all. Like, I don't necessarily think you need Reece James for that. The only problem is, who else do you go to? There's not really any other defenders that are kind of at the top of a lot of people's transfer kind of list. Like, if you already own Trippier and you already own Cancelo, what do you really do with him? You can't go up to Trent because he's injured, and I don't think you necessarily want to even bring Trent in at the moment anyway. So like, what other options are there? I mean, there's obviously Dunk, who's got Brentford away this week, and then he's got Forest midweek, which is obviously a nice couple of fixtures. But then he also has like City as well, and then like Chelsea. So Dunk's only really useful for like the next couple of fixtures. Obviously there's Wolves players as well who've got Forest, then Crystal Palace, then Leicester. Like, that's not too bad. Like, that's a really nice couple of few fixtures. But of course Wolves don't have a manager at the moment. They're also sitting like very close to the bottom of the table, so you don't really know how they're going to shape up at the weekend, or like at the game against Forest. They're quite lucky that they've got the game against Forest at home. That's probably the best fixture they could get in terms of where they are right now. But for me, I feel like James would probably be a sell. Like, I just obviously wait for the press conference. If he is back for like Brentford, then fair play, I'd hold. But if he does miss Villa and Brentford, I don't really see the point of keeping him for United, Brighton, Arsenal, Newcastle, when you could bring in other defenders. But it's exactly at the other end of the kind of stick, there's no one else to bring in really. You could always double up on like City defense, but obviously they blank in game week 12, and then that also means that you can't bring in like De Bruyne or Foden. You could bring in like another Newcastle defender because obviously they have Everton in game week 12, which is like quite a nice fixture, because game week 12 is the tough one. That's where City and Arsenal blank, and you're going to need like to field 11 players because your bench is probably going to consist of like 2 City players and an Arsenal player. Some people are going to go into that game week only playing 10 players because they've got 2 Arsenal and 2 City. So you're going to need to field as many players as you want. So having double Newcastle defense for Everton at home is quite a nice fixture. But obviously on either side of that, they've got United away and Tottenham away. So there's not really an easy answer to what to do with Reece James. It generally obviously depends on the press conference, but if he is out for Villa and Brentford, I'd probably get rid. But again, who do you bring in? Like, Trent's out for a couple of weeks. And the thing is, if you do upgrade to Trent, like, Trent's got some nice fixtures, obviously, after City. They've got West Ham, Forest, but of course Trent's probably going to miss West Ham. He's probably going to miss Forest. He might even miss Leeds. He might be back for Tottenham away. But then he's like got Southampton, Villa, and Leicester, which are obviously nice fixtures. But again, not someone you can easily go to right now. So, for me, I'm just hoping that he's fine and that he is okay. But it's unlikely that he's going to play the Game Week 11 game against Villa, and unlikely he's going to play against Brentford as well. But it's honestly like, who do you bring in instead? Like, Dunk, like I say, is an option. Obviously, if you could, you'd bring in like Saliba and stuff, but he blanks in Game Week 12. So I guess if James is out for like Villa and then Brentford, I think an easy option to bring in for like Game Week 13, which is obviously only next weekend, you just bring Saliba in. He's 5.1, so you get a bit of money, and then Saliba obviously has Southampton and then Forest at home. It does obviously block you from other Arsenal players, like you're obviously going to have Martinelli most likely, so that'd mean you'd have to decide between Saka and Jesus. It'd probably be easier to go for Jesus because there's a lot better. There's a lot of other midfield options like Foden, Bowen, Mount, Maddison, Zaha that you could go to instead of Saka, and then that'd allow you to bring in Jesus. So I think for me, if James is out for Game Week 11, what I'll probably just do is, if he's out for Game Week 12, obviously I need to field 11 players. I'll probably just downgrade him to Dunk, and then I'll just upgrade Dunk to Saliba, and then that'll be that. And then I'll just probably not have Reece James for the foreseeable future until obviously like we get the unlimited transfers in Game Week 16. I think that's the way to go. You just obviously can't bring Saliba in. I mean, you could bring Saliba in this week, but you'd have a blank in Game Week 12 for it, so obviously not really ideal. So that's the James kind of situation. So I think Saliba probably for me, if James is out like Game Week 11, 12, and 13, I think Saliba's a nice option to bring in instead, obviously after the blank. Luis Diaz, I mean, honestly, it's not a bad position to be in. Obviously annoying to have a player injured and, you know, not being available for a while, but he's an easy trade to like a lot of other players. Like you can easily go to Zaha, you can go to Maddison. Again, I wouldn't bring in Foden, or I wouldn't bring in Saka this week because obviously they're both blanking Game Week 12. If I was going to bring in anyone, it would either be Trossard or Bowen. More so Trossard, because Trossard in the next two has Brentford and then Forest, and then you can get rid of him in Game Week 13 for somebody like Foden or Saka after their blank. And I think Trossard over the next two, Brentford and Forest, I think he outscores Bowen, who has Southampton and Liverpool. I know that Bowen is on penalties and stuff, but I just think that Trossard is, I think he's just capable of scoring more than Bowen. Again, it's up to you, but at the same time, I like the idea of going to Trossard for a couple of game weeks as a little bit of a punt, and then getting rid of Trossard for Saka or Foden or someone like that. Obviously, Saka also on penalties. Foden's having a really good season. Also, Mount, I guess, potentially an option. He's been playing really well in the Champions League. But yeah, I mean, Bowen has some nice fixtures as well, though, coming up. Obviously, has Bournemouth in Game Week 13, which is really nice. So, I mean, you could go Bowen if you want and just keep him for the Liverpool game and then obviously have him for Bowen. It's just that Game Week 12 fixture, it's not the greatest, and that's the fixture where you need points from the rest of your team. So, for me, if I was a Diaz owner, I think I would go Trossard and then upgrade Trossard to, like I said, the likes of Saka or Foden in Game Week 13 after the blank. But if you wanted to go Bowen on penalties, not a bad option at all either. It is generally, who do you think scores more in the next like two? Either Trossard, Brentford and Forest, or Bowen, Southampton and Liverpool. I think Trossard does. Bowen could easily outscore. He could easily get a penalty against Liverpool. Is what it is. With Mitrovic, also another, I don't know, another headache, because his comments before the West Ham game was that he was definitely going to be back for Bournemouth in Game Week 11. But now he said that like he wasn't doing too well like after the West Ham game. So honestly, we'll have to wait for the press conference. And I know I'm saying that a lot, but we just generally have to. Don't make any transfers yet. But yeah, if Mitrovic obviously isn't back for Bournemouth, then you know he might not be back for Villa, because obviously that's a midweek fixture. He might be back for Leeds next weekend, but you've missed two really good fixtures, and then you've only got him for Leeds and Everton, and then he's got City. And I don't know if the fixtures even get better after that. They've got United, Crystal Palace. I mean, they're not the worst fixtures after the City game. It's just, it depends how long he's out for. Like, if he is back for Bournemouth, which I think he will be, I personally think he will be, then you don't have to worry about it. You've held him, and hopefully he can reward you with some goals against Bournemouth and Villa. But if he is out, then again, you can't really go to Jesus because he's blanking. You could go to Tony if you wanted to. Tony, after the Chelsea game, has some really nice fixtures. You've got Villa, Wolves, and Forest. Also on penalties as well. A little bit more expensive than Mitrovic, but also a really nice option to bring in. You could bring in Skamaka as well, who's, you know, he's getting a lot more minutes now, and again has some okay fixtures. Of course, that Liverpool game in game week 12 is a little bit off-putting, but still not a terrible option. I was trying to think of other strikers you can even bring in, to be fair. Like, you could even have a punt on. There's not a lot. There's also Isak, who's out. Callum Wilson you could bring in. Again, you want to bring in a striker that's on penalties as well, though, because it's just that extra beneficial thing. And of course, Callum Wilson is on penalties. So, yeah, for Mitrovic, again, wait for game week 11 press conference, but I still think that he's going to be fine for game week 11. I think the Bournemouth game will be hopefully a game he rewards a lot of people and gets a cheeky hat-trick or something. But either way, going on to game week 12, there's also players that people have in their team that that they would have just played game week 12 but now may have lost their spot, and one of those players is Nico Williams. Now, as a Forest fan, you know, it's kind of all up in the air, like whether Williams plays or Aurier plays. Obviously, Aurier played against Villa. However, though, because game week 11, 12, 13, you know, there's quite a turnaround on fixtures. I think that potentially Aurier plays the Wolves game, and then I think Williams plays the Brighton game, and then Aurier plays the Liverpool game. I think that because there is such a quick turnaround, and he can easily, like, Nico Williams is a really good player. He can easily rest Aurier. I still think Williams is a better option than Aurier. I think Aurier loves the yellow card, and I don't rate him as much as Nico Williams. But I think Williams plays game week 12. But again, it's very risky, because if he doesn't, you've lost a player there in your starting lineup. So I think if you were wanting to get rid of him, you want to play it a little bit safer, and you didn't really have any other fires to put out, I think Kilman's just a nice option to bring in for him, because you know you're going to have him for Forest at home this week, and then you've got him for the game week 12 blank. You've got Crystal Palace away, which isn't a terrible fixture, and then game week 13, if you do need him as well, you've got Leicester at home. So I think Kilman could be a nice option. Obviously, you can upgrade to Dunk as well. And that's probably the best two options, or Gay as well if you don't have Gaeta in goal. He's also another option as well for Crystal Palace. But either way, they are all of the most asked questions. I mean, captaincy this week, Haaland, I guess, is the way forward, but I think Kane is also a really nice option as well. If you do have Kane, he does have Everton at home this week, which is obviously a very nice fixture for him. But I still think that Haaland will tear Liverpool apart as well. I know that they just beat Rangers 7-1, but that's Rangers. You have to remember that, like, I know Salah just scored a hat-trick as well, but you have to remember that I think after like 3-1, Rangers just kind of gave up, and that's why. And obviously, I'm not taking anything away from Salah's hat-trick. It was a 5-minute hat-trick, quickest hat-trick in Champions League history. Ridiculous. But I'm still getting rid of him this week. I don't think a hat-trick in the Champions League is gonna tempt me to keep him. But yeah, I think Haaland has to be the captaincy this week. But if you did want to go for a little bit of a differential, Kane is right there. If you don't own Kane, I mean, who else do you really go for? Like Mitrovic, if he's back, Bournemouth at home, could be back with a bang. You're not sure. But anyway, that's everything for today's video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop a like down below. Leave a comment. What are you doing with your Game Week 11 team? Subscribe if you're brand new. It's everything from me, though. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, peace.